Alright, welcome back guys. Episode 2 here of the 20B RX7 build. You guys saw in the last video, I revealed the 20B and installed the Elite Rotary Shop anodized pulleys on it. Also went over a breakdown of the motor just a little bit. So in this video, let's work on getting the engine in the car, modifying the oil pan so that it can sit as low as possible, and some few other tips and tricks along the way of possibly making the turbo manifold and modifying the oil pan. So let's get to it. So you can see right here the oil pan doesn't quite clear. Needs about an inch taken off. So just gonna take the marker and give me a good frame of reference here. Alright, so now that I have the oil pan marked, I can pull the engine back out, notch the oil pan, and build a plate to fill it back in. So all I'm doing now is using an air saw to cut out the marked section of the oil pan. Then I'm going to have to remove the drain bung because it's in the section of the oil pan that I'll be cutting out and relocate it to the side. Alright, so what I did is I just got done drilling out the bung for the oil pan for the 20B. So I can reuse the factory oil bung and factory oil drain plug. So a little trick to getting these things, like to drill them out as close to, you know, perfectly round as possible, is take you a 1/4 inch socket that fits the center pretty well. And it will typically fit the 1/4 inch bit pretty well. And then you can use that as your centering piece without damaging the threads or, you know, damaging the hole saw. Alright, so I'm in my little workshop here at the house, bending up a piece for the oil pan to fit the notch to clear the subframe. So what I did is I just put a piece of sheet metal in my little homemade brake here and clamped it down. C-clamps, clamped a piece of 1 inch too, that kind of fits the contour pretty well. And then just, you know, gave this a lift up with a piece of pipe underneath of it, and yeah, bent it up pretty good. So we'll see how it fits on the oil pan. Alright, so here's that piece that I bent up. I just went ahead and cut it, and all I did was just hold it up against here, trace around the oil pan, and have my lines here. So then went ahead and grinded the paint off of it so I could weld it. Since I took away I did the math, it's about 0.194 of a quart with, you know, notching this out. I have so much extra room up here where the subframe is. I'm actually going to extend the pan out and make some wing sections too. So I'll probably pick up about roughly like another 1.5 quart. So it'll be like 1.25 quart over factory. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to weld this piece in first before cutting this out here, because I want to reinforce the strength here. I'm also going to cut out the factory oil level sensor housing and then cap it off here, and then put the oil drain bung back in right here. So, but before I do that, I want to weld this back in so there's not too much deflection and too much material missing on the oil pan. So let's get this welded up.
So what I'm doing now is I'm tack welding that patch panel into place. And what you want to do when welding really thin sheet metal like this is that you want to put a tack about every inch to inch and a half, because the constant appliance of heat from the TIG welding causes the thin metal to deflect and warp. So that way you want a lot of tacks to hold the piece in place so that it doesn't move or warp as you're doing the final welding.
Alright, so there's most of the welding done. I went ahead and just welded up as much as I could. Little baby welds. Yeah, it's like 5 a.m. here at the house, so what I need to do is I'm going to take this to work with me today. I'm going to hammer in these spots here. I could fill that with weld, but in order to do it, best welds, especially when it comes to TIG welding, you want to have good tight fitment, like the best fitment you can. So I'm going to be patient, take this to work with me, and on my lunch break, hammer those in. Also, I'm going to hammer this section out some because you can kind of see that it lips in under. And then also, I've got enough strength in here, I can also cut this out and begin working on the plate to cover this and put in the oil drain bung. There's also some, you can see the bigger gap on that side there. So yeah, hammer that in, and then she'll be ready to weld all up.
So as you can see here, I'm using the same technique that I did on drilling out the drain bung, but this time I'm having to slide the 1/4 inch socket inside a 17mm socket to center up the hole saw bit.
So we got the hole cut out. Remove that there. I went ahead and cut a piece out, just used the hole saw on the drill press. And fits up pretty good. So a little side project that I'm doing here is for a buddy of mine, Brant. I built a cold air intake setup for his factory Kawasaki 650. So I gotta build a tube that comes up, crosses over into here, and then pops a filter up in here, and then that connects to these two here. So really tight space, as you can see, so this should be fun.
So my buddy already had a pipe cut that fit pretty well. I just need to add the 2-inch reduction sections so that they could go into the rubber intakes of the bike, and then also tweak the front of it so that way it had a place for the air filter to mount. And it is off center on purpose because it does sit off to the side a little bit. So now that I have the 2-inch reduction sections of the pipe cut, I can test fit it into the main piece. You can also see the front of the pipe, how I had to kick it down about 40 degrees of an angle to allow the air filter to sit. Now I can get it home, tack it up, check fitment, and then finally weld it all up.
So the intake pipe's all tacked up now, so hopefully I can do just one more final test fit before fully welding it all up. Let's see here. Yeah, you can see how this thing is a little offset. See how there's a little bit more gap on that side than that side. Make that thing fit perfect into the rubber tubes. That will clamp onto here, and then the filter will go over there. Alright, so the tube's all tacked in place. Now I gotta snake it in between here, push it up against the electronics. Electronic wiring, I should say. And then line it up to the tube. Press that in, front one. Bit of a bugger, but it looks like it is going to go. Sweet. It's actually nowhere near as bad as I thought. So here's just another look before I weld this thing up at just how tight the space is. You can see, I mean, there's just no room in there. And then throwing that T into this elbow here, and then air filter sits right up in there. So pretty slick though. And that's because it all this setup here has to fit underneath that itty bitty gas tank. Alright, so that's it, all welded up. Not bad, so I think it's like 2 1/4, step down to 2 inch. It fits in there, and then fits the filter. That's why it's 2 1/4, step down to 2 inch. Still a little hot, so. And so just welding with my Everlast 200 DV, no poles, just set about 87 amps, dash 8 cup. Yeah, looks good.
This was a fun little project, and I think it turned out really good, but now back to the oil pan.
Alright guys, so before I weld up this hole here and the oil bung, I figured I'd go ahead and show you my little cardboard template for what I plan to do to add extra oil capacity and before putting in the baffles. So here's the little template. You can see that it's about a good 2.5 inches wider with the wings on the side, and then it also extends out about a couple inches. So yeah, just figured I'd show you that before I pull it off, and let's weld it up and then throw it back on the car and throw the engine back in. Alright, so that's it. Welded up. Oil pan. There's the circle welded up. There's the drain bung welded in place. So let's go ahead and throw this back on the motor and get it back in the car and test fit it before doing the modifications up there for the extra oil capacity. Alright guys, well that wraps it up for episode 2. Got the oil pan modded, we got the engine sitting in the car, and as you can see behind me, we got something really fun cooking up for episode 3. Gonna start fabricating the turbo manifold, fabricate the motor mounts, so you're definitely going to want to tune in for that. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share it around, and stick around for the next episode. It's going to be a blast.